You're listening to the Back Porch Talk podcast. Danny and Jason had many discussions and debates on the back porch while making pivotal investment moves with assets. That's right, with trading cards. They welcome you to the back porch and right into those discussions about current sports news with a fresh and unique twist. So come on and join us. Welcome to the Back Porch Talk podcast. Happy holidays, fans. I'm your co-host, Jason.
This is your co-host, Danny.
And we have a packed show for you today. We're going to actually give you our Week 15 NFL reactions. Then we're going a little bit into the college football playoffs, talk a little bit about Tiger Woods and Charlie Woods, Coach Prime, and a little bit about the NBA, being that we're in the midst of the NBA season openers. So NFL Week 15, our recap. So, Danny, let me just say, the Packers went ahead and won 24-16 against the Carolina Panthers. Aaron Rodgers with a pedestrian 143 yards, passing with just one touchdown, walked in another touchdown. Aaron Jones with 145 yards on the ground. Packers look pretty good first half. Second half, I don't know what the hell happened. The Packers are in the driver's seat for the number one overall seed in the NFC conference. And we'll see what happens in these last two remaining games. The game that I'm most interested in, quite honestly, would be against the Tennessee Titans. I believe Derrick Henry is going to have about 185 yards and 2 touchdowns against us on a Sunday night game. Honestly, our run defense is going to be heavily exposed. The Carolina Panthers still continuing to struggle. The Buffalo Bills clinched the division. First time since, I believe, 1995. That's a long time. And ironically enough, that's when we graduated high school. So happy to see somebody else in the AFC East to actually win the title there, the divisional title. The Jets in their first win of the season, but they potentially may lose the number one overall pick. At the same token, who wants to go 0-16? Got to give them props for winning their first game. Players in the locker rooms, they kept pressing, kept pushing, kept competing, and they ended up winning the game against the Los Angeles Rams at Los Angeles in that beautiful stadium. How can you lose in that beautiful stadium against the Jets? There were talks that the Rams were really Super Bowl contenders, but losing to the Jets, I don't know if that was just a fluke game. I don't know. Congratulations to the New York Jets. And my last thought here, the Steelers getting demolished in Monday Night Football. They're now 11-3, and I just think the Steelers are in trouble. I don't know if they have enough time to really pull it together. Rooting for Tomlin, great coach, fraternity brother. I'll say this. It's going to be interesting to see how this all plays out. It really is. So we'll see what happens. What about you, Danny?
This week brought my Atlanta Falcons another heartbreaking loss this week to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, 31-27, where we led 17-0 at halftime and had full control of the game. And then Atlanta reverted back to the way they looked under Dan Quinn. A different team showed up in the second half. Matt Ryan had a great game until the fourth quarter. He ended up with 356 yards and 3 touchdowns. Ridley got off 10 receptions, 160-plus yards and touchdown. So from my standpoint, it's one of those bittersweet things where it's like, all right, dang, we lost, but we're keeping our draft position. The Chargers won again, so they're up now 2 games ahead of us. And like you mentioned, Cincinnati won last night. And Cincinnati is right there. We're a game ahead of Cincinnati. I'm pulling for my boys, and I thought we had it because I was like, all right, we're past the Quinn era where we just blow games like that. But Tom Brady went off and just made us look bad. On to next week against the Kansas City Chiefs. The last item I wanted to call out was the Kyler Murray versus Jalen Hurts, Philadelphia Eagles, Arizona Cardinals game. For those of you who did not see the game, Arizona was tearing those boys apart at first. And then all of a sudden, Jalen Hurts got his confidence. He was a little shaky at first, brought him all the way back, and they had a chance at the end to tie it. There are a couple passes in the end zone that were One should have been a catch and ended up being dropped. And then the other two were contested. Jalen Hurts, and he got pressured a lot in that game at the end. He got sacked a few times, but showing the poise for his second game, starting, going against Kyler Murray, who also had an awesome game, had 406 yards passing. So it was a very up and down game in that second half, and it was great to see those two compete.
And now to the college football playoffs, where the number one overall seed is the Alabama Crimson Tide. Number 2 is that being Clemson. Number 3 being Ohio State. And number 4 being Notre Dame. Now, Alabama against Notre Dame, I would just say that's going to be a blowout, man. That's going to be, I'm predicting the score here, 52-17. And let me just say this about Notre Dame, who got blasted against Clemson in the ACC conference championship game. I don't know, man. I don't know what the panel, the board or whatever, I don't know what they're really looking at and what they're thinking here, first of all. Notre Dame, yes, they played a lot of games. They did beat Clemson earlier on in the season, but that was without Trevor Lawrence. It went into double overtime. And for Notre Dame to be in this playoff situation, to me, screams foul. To have 2 ACC schools, yes, Notre Dame went from independent to the ACC for this season only, but to have 2 ACC schools in the playoffs, to me, it screams foul. And Notre Dame got blasted. So I think there are many other teams that could really honestly be in the mix here for the college football playoffs. Hell, I'll even take Texas A&M, an SEC school where they played a good number of games. And yes, they lost against Alabama earlier in the season. They got blasted against Alabama earlier in the season. But you know what? I would rather watch that game than Alabama against Notre Dame. We've seen this movie before. We've seen this storybook before, in where Alabama blasted Notre Dame in the college football playoffs most recently. So I don't know how much different there would be here. I'm predicting 52-17. And let me go on to Ohio State real quickly, Danny. Yep. Ohio State only played 5 games before going into the Big Ten championship game, and where the Big Ten conference said, you know what, you actually have to have a minimum of 6 games to get into the conference championship. Mm-hmm. Ohio State couldn't play against Michigan because of COVID protocols for Michigan, and that only allowed for 5 games to Ohio State. All I'm saying is, man, they should not have even been able to play. But we all know this. It's all about money when it comes to college football championship, and especially the NCAA. It's all about money. I would have actually really preferred to have seen Northwestern against IU. IU's having an awesome season. And yes, IU did lose to Ohio State earlier in the season. But you know what? The rules were 6 games minimum to get into the championship, the conference championship game. So here we are, Big Ten moving the goalposts yet again to get Ohio State. Now, I'll just say this real quickly, Danny.
Yep.
Ohio State, a whole lot of money. The prestige, the campus, the stadium, the stadium is better than a lot of NFL stadiums out there right now. Mm-hmm. And just have a whole lot of money flowing through. The money that Ohio State can really bring into the Big Ten, especially in the COVID situation. I totally get that. I understand it. But when you make a rule at the beginning of the season and you don't abide by it and you move the goalpost, we've seen that so many times before, not necessarily in sports or college like this, but in just regular everyday life. And to me, this screams foul. And I don't know, man. I honestly believe this is going to be, I believe, almost a runaway type of college playoff football for the NCAA and for college football. So we'll see what happens. I just don't totally agree with the 4 teams that's in there. Hey, it is what it is. How about you, Danny?
This was the year, like other organizations have been doing, to try new things. since it was a special circumstance with COVID, teams play different amount of games. Hell, like Coastal Carolina was trying just to get somebody scheduled. They were willing to play anybody. BYU was trying to play anybody just to get those games to boost their rating in the ranking. And I thought this was the year they could have tried to expand the playoff to 8. This doesn't pass the smell test, where you look at someone like Cincinnati, who went undefeated, over in Ohio State, who looked pedestrian in that Northwestern Big Ten championship game. Granted, they're undermanned. I understand that a lot of their players were suffering from COVID, but why not make it 8, where you then include Texas A&M, Florida, Oklahoma, and Cincinnati at least? Because I look at that. I look at how Florida played Alabama. Florida could beat Notre Dame. Florida could beat Ohio State.
Definitely.
Florida could give Clemson a game.
Definitely. I agree there.
And Texas A&M, I think, falls under that same boat. And Oklahoma is so up and down, it's hard to tell with them. But and then Cincinnati gets the opportunity to showcase for a smaller school perspective. They're not a Power 5. So that's where I feel they dropped the ball this time around. They had an opportunity to try something new. Imagine the interest in that. You have 8 different schools involved instead of 4, the same 4, where the criteria, like you said, the goalpost moved, the criteria moved in this case to include the Big 4 that they wanted from a money standpoint on New Year's Day. I think they blew an opportunity here where they could have had 8 teams.
No, I agree. I agree there. And now on to Coach Prime, Deion Sanders, and recruiting for Jackson State University. I'll just say this. It was signing day for the fall here, and it looks like Jackson State has the best recruiting class within the FCS. We've seen Coach Prime and Jackson State and the rest of the coaches on social media. Their social media game, I will give them props where props is due, is pretty good. I just think that this screams, I don't know, it screams a change is here. It's not coming, it's here. When you look at a lot of athletes now looking at HBCUs to go to participate, to help the university and programs thrive, but then also to have that experience on an HBCU campus, and also to be your own person on a college campus and be in the midst of other great minds and be in that culture. I think the change is here. Is when it comes to student athletes. And so what we're seeing is a combination of NFL Hall of Famer Coach Prime bringing in his marketing techniques to Jackson State, and it's working. It's working. He's flipped a lot of Power 5 student athletes to Jackson State, again, to be ranked number 1 in FCS. But I will tell you what you have to look out for and what's not being discussed. The Florida A&M University last fall in 2019 cracked in the top 20 for recruiting in FCS. What's not being talked about is the same Florida A&M University cracked into the top 10 in signings or for recruiting earlier this year in the spring. So we have, I am a proud alum of Florida A&M University. So what's not being talked about is the fact that, yes, the season was lost because of COVID. But we have some student athletes here primed and ready to go who hasn't hit the field yet in official gameplay, but we have had practices, spring football. We are ready to get on that field. And oh, by the way, that very first game, Labor Day weekend down in Miami for the Orange Blossom Classic is against Jackson State University. Coach Prime returning to his home state of Florida. And oh boy, that's going to be a game for you. So just as, again, Jackson State is getting all this hype, all this media hype, all that, that's fine. That is fine. But know this, the Florida A&M University Rattlers have recruited very well as well. So let's see what happens come Labor Day weekend, and when the two Titans actually get on the field and duke it out. So I'm excited to really see what happens here.
And Jason, like you were talking about with the power schools, so he had 8 transfers come in from the power 5. He had a number of 3-star recruits in addition to his son as the quarterback, and then one other individual as well. So they're doing well. Him being a new coach, it depends on how he's staffed and ready to roll to incorporate all that talent all in one, right? Because there's a lot of excitement, a lot of buzz around Jackson State. I'm very curious how they pull all this talent together in this first year to make it a successful year.
Exactly.
Because a lot of these students too they're going to be freshmen, sophomore. They're not seniors, right? So it's going to take time to acclimate to the student athlete life. It's going to take, I think, 2 years where you see Jackson State achieve what they want to achieve just to incorporate all the talent.
Yeah. And it's going to be a welcome to college football type moment, I think, Labor Day weekend for Coach Prime. And now on to Tiger and Charlie Woods, and where they actually paired up in the PNC Championship game, where it's like a father and son type pairing, and they go at it in an actual tournament. And watching young 11-year-old Charlie Woods, his golf swing, his approaches, he is very good at 11 years old. I'm just really curious to see, honestly, the TV ratings for this particular golf tournament, because in looking at social media, there were a lot of people who were actually watching young Charlie Woods. Could have even been parents on social media, but indicating that their child was watching Charlie Woods. So here we have a whole nother generation coming into possibly the entire sport, including minorities. This is really going to be interesting how it kind of shakes out. I really hope that, and I believe he will, Tiger will really protect young Charlie Woods from all of the hoopla. But I think Charlie Woods can become a pro soon. And this begs the question whether or not he even has to go to college and get into the NCAA. A young Charlie Woods, when he gets of age, can he go right into the pros, whether it's with the PGA or if it's with a different golf league? My understanding is that Tiger Woods has been approached to owner of a premier golf league team. Earlier in the year, Tiger was actually looking at that. And what that would entail would be several tournaments, 48 people or 48 players in this 18 event schedule from the likes of January to September. And each week, there's a $10 million purse with a season-ending team championship. So as we're talking about young Charlie Woods here and Tiger possibly becoming an owner of a team, let's just think about this for a minute, Danny. In terms of young Charlie Woods becoming a pro, Tiger owns a team. Charlie Woods doesn't necessarily have to become a PGA Tour pro player. He can become a player within his dad's team or a part of this premier golf league and be as prestigious in this league as he would have been in the PGA. This is going to be very interesting. And we talked about the dynamics of how golf is a global sport. And so as the young Charlie Woods is now starting to become more involved in tournaments and everything, traveling, he's getting exposed to the business side of it. So this is going to be really interesting to see how this really materializes and all. Man, it was so awesome watching Charlie Woods. They did come in 7th place at this tournament. And as a result, their earnings was $47,000. But let's just think about this for a minute. $47,000 for an 11-year-old. Come on, man. Come on, man. I mean, that is awesome, man. So, man, I just hope that, and I'm pretty certain he will. Tiger will look after young Charlie Woods. I mean, just imagine the endorsement deals that can even come at Charlie Woods right now.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
I mean, to get a potentially a new generation of players into playing golf. I mean, just the endorsement deals off of that alone could be magnificent. And I'm pretty certain, obviously, Tiger has gone through this. He knows the pitfalls. He knows it all. So, again, this is just going to be interesting in how it all materializes. And now to a little bit about the NBA, being that we're in the midst of opening day, the Golden State Warriors are actually playing the Brooklyn Nets. And later on tonight, the Los Angeles team's going at it with the Lakers getting their rings. Yeah. This is going to be interesting, man. I'm very excited about the NBA opening up the season. Short off season for those who were in the bubble, but for those teams that did not participate in the bubble, it's been a long off season. Some of them haven't played really since March. Yeah, this is going to be really interesting for the season that is now just a 72-game season. A lot of moves have happened. Besides that, man, there's just been a lot happening, man. We're in the midst of not only opening day, but also the Christmas schedule, which I cannot wait for, man.
Yes.
This is going to be this outstanding Christmas Day lineup. Starting off, you're going to have the New Orleans Pelicans against the Miami Heat. And it's going to be, it's going to be interesting to see how that really plays out. I'm anxious to see. I'm just anxious to see the NBA period. But man, to see the Miami Heat, how are they going to, come off of a finals appearance? Zion Williamson for New Orleans, is he going to remain healthy? He has no restrictions. I listened to an interview of them, and he indicated he has no restrictions, which is about time. He says he's fully healthy. So, what about you, Danny?
Obviously very excited for opening night. Like you mentioned, the LA teams and the ring ceremony and the Lakers showing that 17th banner. So congratulations to the Los Angeles Lakers for that. And then the Christmas slate, usually there's 2 or 3 duds on Christmas, but the matchups this year are actually really good.
Very good.
Please check them out because you got Mavs, Lakers as the nightcap.
Man, that's going to be
Clippers,
good.
Nuggets.
That's going to be good too.
Warriors, Bucks.
Oh, that's going to be awesome.
And then also Nets and Celtics.
That's going to be good too.
So usually you got, like I say, usually got a couple duds in there where you're like, all right, man, I either go take a nap or go eat but you're going to have to check this action out throughout the day. So very excited for that. Just see how things go off this tonight and see KD in that Brooklyn Nets uniform playing against the Warriors is what I'm looking forward to, besides the Laker game, of course.
Let me just add here, Danny. So the Warriors on the road for the first 2 games of their season, and I'm really looking forward to the Warriors against the Bucks. I think what I've seen in the preseason by the Milwaukee Bucks has been a semblance of the Golden State offense, and where there's a lot of weak side screens, a lot more movement, which is very similar to what the Golden State Warriors has done. This season, I am interested, though, in the Eastern Conference because now we have the likes of KD with Brooklyn Nets playing. Every time the Brooklyn Nets play, I'm going to watch because I just like KD's game. I mean, he's a sniper. When you think about him going from the Western Conference to the Eastern Conference, you can see now a super playing like at 7 p.m. or 8 p.m. You don't have to wait for a 10:30 type game and then have to go to bed and wake up in the morning to find out what happens or what have you. You can see a full game of a superstar. So I think that really speaks volumes. It's interesting that the opening games tonight are at 7 p.m. and 8 and 10 p.m. I think the NBA has made it a conscious effort to really start the games a little bit earlier, so that way people can actually watch a good portion of the Western Conference games if they're living on the Eastern Conference time zone. So it's going to be really interesting, man. I'm really anxious The Eastern Conference got a lot better.
I think too, less games, less wear and tear. So that should be a positive for the players. I know some of the players, like the Lakers and Miami, obviously played deep into the bubble and they only had like a month and a half, 2 months to get ready.
Mm-hmm.
But with the shortened season, less players taking games off. You got a race to get to the playoffs. So I think it's something too where the NBA could see, because I know they've toyed with shortening the season, but the owners are saying no because they don't want to lose that money, that revenue. But if it's something that works and the players are healthier going into the playoffs, it may be something they have to really consider.
I'm going to tell you what else they've toyed with. And this is actually something that Commissioner Adam Silver has recently stated. And this is about NBA expansion.
Mm-hmm.
And one of his quotes here in an interview is the following. One of our focuses as the league office is always on how do you create better competition. So that's one of the things that we continue to think about as we consider expansion. It's an economic issue and it's a competitive issue for us. So it's one that we'll continue to study, but we're spending a little bit more time on it than we were pre-pandemic. When you think about expansion,
Mm-hmm.
because I believe it's likely to happen, I'm going to tell you 2 reasons why. The first is time. It's time to expand.
Mm-hmm.
The second reason, the NBA and the NBA teams need that money. My understanding in terms of expanding or having a team come into the NBA is that there's $1 billion, $1 billion with a B, $1 billion price tag to the NBA for an expansion team to come into the NBA. That money is then split to the other NBA teams. So when that happens, teams obviously increase the money, increase revenue, which at this particular moment in the pandemic, the NBA teams, they need that money. So I believe an expansion is going to happen, I believe, sooner than what we think. I believe it's going to happen probably within the next couple of years to really help with the loss of revenue from having fans in the stands, from ticket sales, concession sales, etc. I believe this expansion thing is going to happen. Let me ask you this, Danny. Let's say expansion is approved, right?
Yes.
What NBA cities do you think it would expand to? Now, keep in mind, when expansion happens, it has to be really evened out. One on the Eastern Conference and one in the Western Conference.
Okay.
So what cities do you feel a team would in the NBA would expand to?
So the first 2 that came to mind were Seattle.
Yes, you gotta be Seattle, man.
Seattle's been pining for a team ever since they lost their team. The one, let me just say this before I get to my Eastern time zone or Midwest team. I think the NBA will want to go to Vegas.
Yep. Yep.
Because the Raiders are there now.
Mm-hmm.
And with sports betting and letting the NFL kind of proof of concept, how that plays out with professional players in that environment. Granted, it's the pandemic, but you have something there now. So the NBA could play off of that. When I look at the other side of the country, I'm thinking like a St. Louis, who had the Hawks way back in the day. How about you, Jay?
I agree with you on the West Coast. First team that comes to mind would be the Seattle Supersonics.
Mm-hmm.
And I specifically say the Seattle Supersonics because they need to keep that nickname. They need to keep that name, period. It was interesting on NBA TV watching the Rain Man in the Glove, that conversation, right?
Yeah.
Gary Payton and Sean Kemp. It was really interesting, seeing them together, hearing them talk about the Seattle community and the Supersonics. And I just remember every time watching a game for the Seattle Supersonics, man, the crowd was just hype, man. Just the atmosphere was just like no other. So I really want Seattle to get a team. And then by the way, they have the Seattle Storm, WNBA team there. So I think that would be a great opportunity there for the Seattle. And plus, I think it'd be easy for them to get $1 billion, get a governor of a franchise to give $1 billion to NBA. I think that'll be easy. I agree with you with Las Vegas as well, so I won't restate. I agree with you with Las Vegas, so that's going to be a competition, between the two cities.
Yep.
The Eastern Conference is very difficult. I agree with you with St. Louis. I think that would be a great welcoming back of the NBA to the Midwest.
Mm-hmm.
So I agree with you there. I can't think of any other city in the Eastern Conference.
Would you think then somewhere like Nashville? Is that too close to Memphis? And Nashville's highly populated. They have the Titans.
I can see that happening.
It's a booming city.
Yeah. Yep. I can see that happening in Nashville. But I think I will go St. Louis first before Nashville. Yep. Mm-hmm. I mean, really, when you think about it, the NBA can almost dub this a welcome back expansion. One to Seattle and one to St. Louis.
Yep.
They could dub it welcome back NBA.
Mm-hmm.
And, man, they can do a whole promotion around that. I really think the NBA should look at us for consultation purposes. I think, the whole welcome back to the NBA promotion, marketing pitch to St. Louis and to Seattle would be huge.
Mm-hmm.
I think it could be huge for the communities in Seattle, especially in the communities in St. Louis. So just as we're talking about the NBA expansion and really the whole welcome back to the NBA theme, the promotion, the marketing pitch, you also have to think about what stadiums what arenas are actually currently existing. Because in the midst of this pandemic, we don't know how each city is financially.
Yep.
Obviously, there will be some feasibility studies done for those respective cities and all. But when you think about Seattle,
mm-hmm.
there's already a stadium available, or shall I say they've talked about in the Seattle area building a stadium, building an arena for basketball. So there's money there already. So that might be easy. I can't say easy, but that might already be a plug and play type situation.
Yep.
But when you talk about St. Louis, Nashville, some of these other places in the Midwest, that might be a little bit more difficult to really handle, because I don't believe there's an arena that already exists in those respective areas or respective cities. So that's not something else for a feasibility study would really bring about, if you will. So yeah, this is gonna be very interesting to really see, especially in the Midwest, a smaller market. But I think they can really look to the likes of Milwaukee, small market, recently built an arena, had help from obviously the community from the city, but then also the governors actually put in a lot of their own personal money. So that would be very interesting to see. But NBA, I'm telling you, welcome back to the NBA promotional marketing pitch theme would be ideal here. We'll see what happens. The NBA went ahead and wrapped up their investigation of the Milwaukee Bucks and the Bodgan Bogdanovich proposed trade that fell through. And as a result, the Bucks were fined a second-round pick in the 2022 draft. I think this is so unfair. Tampering happens all the time in the NBA. It could be just, though, that it was the magnitude or how much press this quote-unquote tampering. I just don't think, all the NBA teams do this, man. I think it's unfair, but I think it's due to the magnitude of how much press that this actually received. And so for the Bucks, maybe this was a blessing in disguise. The fact that we still have Dante DiVincenzo and that we still have what they call Slanky's move. The fact that we still have both of them may actually prove to be beneficial for us. So
from what I was reading online, Adam Silver is taking a stronger hold of tampering, and the Bucks just happen to be wrong place, wrong time, where teams actually narking on the Bucks or pushing Silver to do something to the Bucks. But it's not, if you remember back in the day, original name, original game, Joe Smith, when the Timberwolves got handed down that strong fine, it was 5 picks, I believe, and some cash for Joe Smith, where David Stern wanted to make an example out of a team. This Bucks thing, I think, was way overblown by just the whole process of it. And it wasn't like it was a superstar player either, right? So that's where the other thing that kind of threw me for a loop was like, all right, he got 4 for 72 from Atlanta. Okay, great. It's not like they're trying to get LeBron James in on some sneaky thing. So that's where I thought this could have been handled way differently. But I think with free agency was going on and things are going so fast, like I said, Silver may just wanted to make an example to say, all right, Milwaukee, you get off with a second-round pick, losing a second-round pick. Next team, it's going to be more substantial. So it could have been just wrong place, wrong time from my standpoint. They complied. They worked with the NBA. Thank goodness it's over now, and it's a second-round pick. It could have been worse. So I'm just glad that it was just a second-round pick.
There we have it. Thank you for joining us at Back Porch Talk Podcast. You can also join us on Twitter by tweeting us at @back_podcast. For more information, you can go to our website, which is backporchtalkpodcast.com. You can also email us at backporchtalkpodcast@gmail.com. Again, thank you for joining us, and remember that there's enough hate in the world, so go ahead and spread a little love.